Ant and Rudy helped the Wolves take care of business with the 109-105 win over the Clippers. And I got Jack Borman. He's going to help us break it all down. It's all coming up next on the Locked On Wolves Postcast.
You are Locked On Wolves Postcast, part of Locked On Minnesota on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up? What's up? Back in the lab, back at it. Another T-Wolves Postcast episode right here on the Locked On Sports Minnesota Network. You got myself, Luke Inman, at Luke_Spinman. That's the man, Jack Borman, on Twitter, at JRBorman13. And Jack, before we get into all the action, quick reminder, tonight's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more with America's #1 sportsbook and official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Right now, new customers, you're getting $150 in bonus bets with any $5 bet. $150 when you bet just $5. Check it all out. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOnNBA. All right, man. So a lot of talk about the schedule starting to soften up now after that gauntlet run in December. You got the Trailblazers last Friday, got the Pistons coming up next. But one of the big litmus tests you knew would be tonight versus this red-hot Clippers team who are just stacked to the gills with talent. So I know it got a little dicey at the end, but to see the Wolves in the driver's seat for almost the entire game, that was great to see. Kick things off with your maybe broader observations before we get into all the nuts and bolts. What's your biggest takeaways and observations, and what a win like this means for the Timberwolves?
Yeah, certainly a huge one for the Wolves when you consider that outside of the Timberwolves, I think the Clippers have been the most impressive team in the Western Conference so far this season. The way that they, really looked dysfunctional at the start of the season, and then made that move to acquire James Harden, and looked even more dysfunctional right after Harden got acquired. But since then, they've just been a heat-seeking missile in the Western Conference. They've been incredible on both ends of the floor. For the Timberwolves, especially the way that the Clippers threw the kitchen sink at them defensively early on. They threw a zone at them. They were switching. They switched up how they were, aligning guys on different players to give everybody a different look. And the Wolves spacing was incredible again. You saw Karl-Anthony Towns in the corner again. In that first quarter especially, but then again in the third quarter and the fourth quarter, really whenever he shared the floor with Rudy Gobert, which was awesome and has been a huge reason why the Timberwolves offense has been pretty efficient here. The ball movement and spacing was just way better with Karl at the in the corner or in that kind of deep slot area. I thought, again, they went away from it in the second quarter when Karl was the 5 and they kind of featured him, as the main scorer, and he just didn't. He just didn't score it as well. It wasn't as efficient. He had 4 more turnovers tonight. I would venture to guess, that pretty much all of those came, on the drive, trying to do a little bit too much. And again, man, when you look at how Karl played, I mean, he only took 4 threes, probably could have taken more, but again, was more efficient inside the arc. Was 5 of 8, which is what you want. He just has to clean up those turnovers. But and then in the second quarter when they got bogged down a little bit, more turnovers than assists, 4 turnovers, 3 assists. Had a 4-point stretch in over 6 minutes of play, which wasn't great. But outside of that, I thought the drive and kick game was incredible. Timberwolves did a great job, especially in that fourth quarter early on, of just kind of pouring it on, right? 25 assists, not great for them. But again, I thought that, some of that had to do with Anthony Edwards just kind of playing hero ball, and the Timberwolves really just kind of, or the Clippers really just kind of slowing the pace of the game down, which was huge. But defensively, then again, man, especially on Paul George and Harden, was really pleased with how the Timberwolves played here. Paul George, 16 points on 5 of 19 shooting. He really just looked uncomfortable all night long with the Timberwolves switching 1 through 4, out on the perimeter. James Harden, 14 points on 4-14 shooting. He was awesome in the fourth quarter. Have to give him credit. He was kind of the engine behind the Clippers really getting into the game. But for the most part, Ant did a great job on him. Slow-Mo did a great job on him. And then the big note here defensively for the Clippers, for the Clippers against the Wolves defense, they were 12 of 17 at the rim. That's 71%. Everywhere else, they were 24 of 66, which I think goes to show that, the Timberwolves' length really, really bothered them. They're not used to facing defenses that can rotate as crisply and as quickly as the Wolves do. and then when they put Russell Westbrook out there, the Timberwolves guarded him with Karl Anthony Towns or Rudy Gobert, especially in 5-out lineups, which made it really difficult for the Clippers, 3 offensive stars to really operate off the bounce, which was huge. So really on both ends of the floor against arguably the team that will be the toughest matchup for them in the playoffs this season. If they get there in the second, if they'd play each other in the second round or the Western Conference Finals, something like that, they passed this one with flying colors, especially when the Clippers really put the screws to them and made it difficult for them. Late in the fourth quarter, the Timberwolves really, I think kind of stumbled and did a great job of kind of, finding their balance and getting this one to the finish line.
Yeah, I do want to ask you a little bit more about this Clippers team, but you're right. Cat was really efficient, obviously, like you mentioned. You got Rudy with 18 boards, 15 points, 4 monster blocks, 4 super clutch free throws at the end as well. Ant, 33 points. That's a career high versus the Clippers. 16 in the third quarter alone. Unbelievable. On top of that, add in a little 9 boards, 6 assists for good measure. No big deal. Just another night at the office for him. Those two specifically, though, really helped propel this team tonight and really took over the game at times, didn't they? Just talk to me about those two tonight and how massive, how huge they were for this win.
Yeah, starting with Rudy Gobert, this was my favorite Rudy Gobert game in Timberwolves uniform. It may not have been like his best statistical game. I don't know what that would be off the top of my head. But he had 15 points, 18 rebounds, 4 blocks. He airballed a couple of free throws in the first half, and the Clippers bench was absolutely clowning him. And these, Rudy Gobert, Mike Conley, and the Clippers have a history from, I want to say 2020, when they played the Jazz in the second round of the playoffs. The Jazz were dominating. They were up like 25 points at home in the second half, and the Clippers went small, kind of isolated and forced switches to get Rudy Gobert on the perimeter every single time and pretty much played him off the floor because the Jazz didn't have anyone else that could help him. He couldn't defend 5 guys by himself. And the Clippers ended up coming back to win that game and win that series in Utah. And so that certainly stuck with Rudy. And then you think about that history, them kind of clowning him, at the free throw line. I thought it was fantastic the way that Rudy was just everywhere defensively, just made plays. Like you said, the 4 blocks, didn't have any steals, but certainly forced some turnovers inside with guys just kind of, crapping their pants on the drive, remembering that Rudy's there and having to think of something on the fly and turning it over. I thought the way that he switched out onto the perimeter and played some really awesome defense in moments like that. He also had that really athletic play to force the turnover on Mason Plumlee. Out there on the perimeter as well. So he really did everything for them defensively, which was really what you want to see. And I thought he did it in different ways. He did it at all 3 levels of the defense, moved his feet really well, stayed vertical, forced a lot of missed shots. Again, like we talk about almost every time here, 7 of 20 in the short mid-range, 4 to 14 feet for the Clippers, 35%. They were 0 of 7 in long mid-range. So free throw line at the 3-point line. So 7 of 27 overall in the mid-range, 26%. That's going to play every single time. And a lot of that has to do with the shots that Rudy Gobert forces in that deep drop. And then, like you said, 4 huge free throws at the end of the game. He was just tremendous in the fourth quarter. And again, 18 huge rebounds was a huge reason why the Timberwolves were able to come away with this one. And then Anthony Edwards, man. And the one last note on Rudy Gobert, 13 drawn fouls. I think that, I don't know where that ranks in terms of his best games ever. But that was pretty remarkable. That most of those weren't shooting fouls. Did everything he could to help impact the game, even when the Timberwolves weren't really finding him to score around the basket. But moving on to Ant, it was really in that third quarter, right, for Anthony Edwards, where he just went absolutely bananas. He had 20 of his 33 points, 5 of 9 shooting, 8 of 9 from the free throw line, got to the line 9 times in one quarter. I don't know if he's done that in a non-fourth quarter at all in his entire career. So that was certainly really impressive from him. And then had 2 assists and didn't turn it over. I think that was the most important thing about Ant kind of going nuclear is he was able to do it really efficiently, shot better than 50%. Again, got to the free throw line 9 times and did not turn the ball over in that third quarter. I just think that, when he's riding that wave, it makes it so much easier for everyone else around him to really just be able to focus on getting back in transition, which I think is an underrated part of Ant kind of going nuclear, is that it kind of allows guys to just trust that Ant's got it on the offensive end, and then they can get back defensively and be smarter about when they're crashing the glass. And I think it just kind of wears down and breaks the spirit of the opponent. And it's one of the intangibles that Ant has that I think every Timberwolves fan loves about him, especially in front of a packed house at Target Center. The way he was able to do that tonight, I certainly think that the Ant's kind of bursts and runs that he can go on like that, really kind of break down an opponent's spirit more than 95, 97% of the NBA. And so for him to finish with 33 points, 9 rebounds, 6 assists, did have 5 turnovers, and kind of again showed his inexperience a little bit in the fourth quarter. But overall, just another amazing, just superstar level effort for man.
Yeah, unbelievable. Those free throws, man, what a breath of fresh air. Like you said, I don't know when the last time he's had that many free throws got to the stripe, but that was a lot of fun to watch. If he can add that into his repertoire night in, night out, that's just dangerous, man. Before we move on, anything you want to add as far as the offense goes? You texted me after the first half about how impressed you were with some of the spacing. I know you mentioned that at the top, but what they were able to accomplish with that at times. You mentioned the kickout game with Cat and what that showed. Just overall, I guess, how happy were you with the offense tonight? Outside those pesky turnovers, they just can't find a way to shake, of course. But anything more to add from the X's and O's department, I guess?
Yeah, I think the way, when they're able to space the floor and they're able to get Cat in the corner, it opens up so much more cutting from the Timberwolves offense. Again, Jaden McDaniels, 5 points in that first quarter alone. I thought they did it. They're at their best doing it in the first quarter. Naz Reid also had 5 points. And Naz also, when Naz comes in and plays alongside Carl, watch where Naz is. Naz is in the corner. I think Naz came in for Carl in that, or was it, I'm drawing a blank. I think Naz came in for Carl. No, he came in for Rudy in that first quarter. But yeah, when he's playing, it doesn't really matter. When he's playing alongside Cat or Rudy, I mean, you see Naz there at the, in the corner, which is huge. And Naz is a great corner shooter. And for me, like Karl-Anthony Towns, I trust that Karl-Anthony Towns, can really improve on his corner shooting. He's not great from the corner in his whole career just because he hasn't been there that much. But I mean, if he starts playing there more, there's no doubt in my mind that he'll really pick it up there. But I think when you get a 4 that's spaced out to the corner like that, that's a legit 3-point threat. When Ant and Rudy, had that pick and roll game in the middle of the floor, it gives Ant so much more room to drive to the rim, to draw those fouls, and to make kick out passes, because the defense is going to have to sink, in from one of those corners. Because you don't want to have Ant going one-on-one with someone to the rim with a head of steam like that. And so I think, there's been some talk this season about, should the Wolves trade someone like Kyle Anderson for a shooter? We'll get into that a little bit later, but that's just another reason why I don't think the Timberwolves necessarily need to do that. They're like 7th in the league in 3-point percentage. And I think if they just stay out more space and let Ant drive more and pick and roll and kick it out, I think they're going to be able to generate a lot more threes. And in the spacing that Carl creates when he's there in the corner, I think unlocks more of that drive and kick game and can create more 3-point opportunities. And I mean, the Timberwolves tonight from 3, 13 of 26, 50%. They didn't get up quite as many tonight as you might want to see them get up. But again, 44 points in the paint is tremendous. And the quality of 3-point looks that they created was really, really strong against a type of defense that they've really struggled with this season. Teams that can switch 1 through 5 and throw different types of zones and mix up their defensive coverages really well. And so it was encouraging that the quality of shots from the Timberwolves tonight was awesome.
Yeah, well said. All right, plenty more deep dive from this one right after a quick word from BetterHelp. What are some things you want to keep the same about yourself or about your life in 2024? Where are you already crushing it? Maybe start thinking the opposite of new year, new you. Try ditching all the New Year's resolutions and start expanding on what you already do right. Maybe that's organizing the closet or the garage. I know that's something that I always struggle with. Maybe you take those daily vitamins and stay healthy during the new year, but now you're looking to take it to the next step. Well, therapy can help you find your best strengths and maximize your own specific skill set so you can finally ditch the extreme resolutions. Instead, Therapy can help you make changes that really stick over the long term once and for all. If you've been thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online and it's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited for your time frame. And it's so easy. All you got to do is fill out a brief questionnaire, get matched up with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time at no additional charge. It's time to start celebrating the progress you've already made. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Let's pick up back here on the defensive side of things. Let me just say, first of all, it's just so fun to watch the number one defense in the NBA on a night in, night out basis, isn't it? Clippers only had 68 points heading into the fourth quarter, 10 of 32 on everything outside of the paint in the first half. And what they did to Paul George tonight, man, that was a thing of beauty too. Dude was 1 of 10 in the first half. He ended the night with a modest 16 points, which for Paul George, maybe an off night, some would call that. You got to give the Clippers credit late. That rally got kind of scary at the end. I know they kind of caught fire with the 3-ball, 37 points in the fourth quarter, but I guess just your quick overall thoughts on the defense and how the Wolves played tonight.
Yeah, I was really impressed with the defense tonight, mostly because, the Clippers are a team that really spread you out and force a lot of players to defend in one-on-one situations, whether it's against Harden, Kawhi Leonard, or Paul George. And those are 3 of the best isolation players, not just in the NBA, not just of this era, but of all time. When they get anyone on an island, they have the advantage. I do not care who the defender is. I don't care if it's Jaden McDaniels or Giannis or Rudy Gobert or whoever it is. Those guys have the advantage. And the way that the Timberwolves were able to shut a lot of that off, they did a great job of beating those guys to the spot and forcing them to change the direction off the dribble, forced a lot of tough pull-up jumpers in the mid-range. And I thought that they contested those really, really well, especially on Kawhi Leonard, who's, one of the better mid-range jump shooters we've ever seen in this league. And he's a guy that can just get to his spot and elevate, and there's not a whole lot you can do about it. But I thought that Ant and Jaden, especially when they were switched on to Kawhi, had some great reps there. And you could just tell that the Clippers were really bothered with the length. I thought that the Timberwolves, again, did an awesome job of rotating, Xing out on the backside of the defense on shooters. That's something that we saw a lot more of 2 years ago when the Wolves made the playoffs, and they're in that high wall coverage. It forces a lot more rotation. Whereas a drop, everybody kind of stays home a little bit more. But even in the traditional drop coverage with the Wolves switching, pretty much everything except for Rudy Gobert or a screen that Rudy Gobert was involved in, I thought they communicated exceptionally well, so that when they, did X out on the backside instead of staying home on shooters, that there weren't that many just wider than wide open looks, which is what we've seen when the Timberwolves defense struggles, is that communication isn't there. The rotating on the backside isn't as good, but they did a great job tonight. And Kyle Anderson, again, man, did a great job keeping guys in front of him. He guarded Russell Westbrook for times. Did a great job, forced a couple of turnovers. Was really good when he switched on to Kawhi and Harden and Paul George. And again, just another guy with length who isn't the quickest guy, but he can really get in a stance and move his feet. And again, just a really good help side defender, really smart about when to rotate and when to stay out on shooters, when to kind of dig in on drivers versus when to stay home on shooters. And again, with his length, 7'3" wingspan, does a really good job stunting. So that's when a guy kind of has an open 3 and he's in between 2 guys, kind of stunting out, kind of, jutting out to the guy who has the ball and then getting back to his man to buy, the guy who's supposed to be on the ball a little bit more time to get back to the ball. He's so good at those things. And overall, just a great night from the Timberwolves defense, who, another night of holding an opponent under 50, not only under 50%, but under 45%. And the Clippers wouldn't have gotten to 100 points if they didn't, totally extend the game with a bunch of fouls in that fourth quarter.
You just mentioned Slow-Mo. He's really stepped up his game since that Celtics game, really, since on last Wednesday. I'm just curious, your thoughts on the bench play, I guess, the last 3 games or so. I mean, Naz Reid, always going to be Naz Reid. Again, Slow-Mo's kind of stepped up the last 3 games. Still been, a nice piece to the puzzle, I guess. McLaughlin looks healthy again. But you tell me, should we feel good about the bench right now, or still maybe looking to make a move at the trade deadline and maybe add a little bit more juice?
Yeah, I think you've got to be pleased with what they've gotten from the bench. I still think, the Timberwolves are one of the lowest scoring teams when you look at bench production, which is okay. They've got, again, they're not an offensive first team. But tonight specifically, Chris Finch only played 8 guys. He hasn't done that. This might be one of maybe 3 games this whole season where Chris Finch has only played 8 guys really. And it totally had a playoff feel because of it, right? Like Chris Finch pretty much will strictly only play these 8 guys in a playoff series, unless there's foul trouble or a matchup, dictates, really needing more shooting in Troy Brown Jr. or, potentially a deadline acquisition like you talked about. I could see the Timberwolves, really trying to, add some more juice, maybe in the shooting department. But again, like people want to throw out Kyle Anderson's name as a guy that they want to move, or, the Timberwolves would move just because he makes $9 million and it's easier to get a higher impact guy, I guess, with including his salary to make a trade legal. But I think that they'll try to move someone like Shake Milton and then attach either Josh Minot or Wendell Moore Jr., with at least one first round pick, or at least one second round pick, potentially a second round pick, to try to net a guy that has a little bit more offensive juice, like you were saying, just because I think you'd like to be able to get more than 24 bench points in a game like tonight, just because I think if the bench isn't able to score more efficiently, it just puts so much more pressure on guys like Jaden McDaniels and Mike Conley to step up and be that third scorer. Because Rudy, Rudy's not really a scorer. That's not really his thing. I think that like his points are just a lot more matchup dependent than anything else. Whereas I think you're looking at Mike or Jaden to be a more consistent, go-to. We can rely on this guy for 12, 14, 16 points a game. So we'll see what happens. But in terms of the regular season, I do think that including Jordan McLaughlin in the rotation, I think will help stimulate some more open looks for this bench offense that's kind of been stuck in the mud for most of the season, just because J-Mac does such a good job of playing with pace and getting the ball moving and getting guys the ball where they like it in scoring positions, which is certainly, his best attribute as a player. And he's been making his threes this year, which has been great to see. So, if he can continue to provide the spark that he's provided offensively, at least in between now and the trade deadline, before maybe the Timberwolves are able to call in some reinforcements either via trade or in the buyout market, because they do have enough money right now, but below the luxury tax to bring in a buyout player. And they also have an open roster spot. They've had an open roster spot the entire season. So that is also something that I certainly expect the Timberwolves to be active players in, come 3-4 weeks from now.
Random Planet in the comments just read my mind. I heard Jim Pete, maybe you heard it too, during Friday's game, say he's really digging this Mike Conley, Jordan McLaughlin combo when Finchy gets them both on the floor. Small sample size. I know McLaughlin didn't even play tonight, but anything extra they could add to the equation at some point, the more they work together as the season goes on? Or is that something that's kind of caught your eye at all and you've liked what you've seen?
Yeah, it certainly has. And I think it's a testament to what Jordan McLaughlin is able to do on the ball as a defender, guarding opposing point guards. Because Mike Conley generally plays off the ball anyways defensively. And he obviously, is used to playing off ball next to Anthony Edwards offensively. So it's certainly a pairing that can work on both ends of the floor. Both those guys are, do a lot of the same things really well, and that they, are really good at moving the ball, getting guys organized, cutting when they don't have the ball, just to, force the defense to move and can spot up and make threes. Obviously Conley at a better rate, than Jordan McLaughlin so far. But those lineups haven't been quite as good as you might think. They're minus 7.3 in 55 possessions. Obviously that's a pretty small sample size, but they have been pretty good in the most common lineup that we've seen out of those two, which is McLaughlin, Conley, McDaniels, Towns, and Rudy Gobert. So that's something that we've seen when Ant's been in foul trouble. That's kind of when we've seen those lineups most commonly, kind of as that bridge lineup, like midway through the second quarter before Ant comes in, and then midway through the fourth quarter before Ant comes in. kind of at the start of the second, the start of the fourth quarters is when you've seen those lineups, and they've been effective, at least with that last 5-man unit that I said. So certainly a lineup that we can see more of. McLaughlin played a lot alongside D'Angelo Russell when he was here, and those two lineups were always really successful. And in terms of Russell and Conley are both very similar in their abilities to play off the ball offensively, and also spending more time playing off the ball than on the ball defensively. So while they are certainly two very different players, D'Angelo Russell and Mike Conley, they do bring those similar attributes that at least allow them to play alongside Jordan McLaughlin and be successful in doing so.
We always spend a quick 60 seconds or so on the opposing team every night. I think there's plenty I can learn from you in regards to this Clippers team. So I know they started out slow, hottest team in the league though, now 22-6 in their last 28, 22-7 now, I should say. But it was fun to sit down and just watch these guys up close and personal. And I guess I want to know what you think about them as far as maybe a playoff matchup. Would that scare you a bit or not? What's the scouting report, I guess? And are they a potential top 2 seed in the West when it's all said and done, if they can actually stay healthy for another 3-4 months?
Yeah, well, the NBA actually came out with a report this weekend that basically proved that load management did not do anything to to at least keep players healthy, as opposed to just playing guys. And
That's
the Clippers were arguably like the biggest case study with that, and that they were really into load managing guys, especially Kawhi and Paul George. And now all those guys have played a ton this season, and they've been really, really good, and they've caught fire and caught a rhythm in the regular season because of it. And there's no reason to me why they can't continue this if they're able to stay healthy. Because all those guys, and throw Russell Westbrook in there as well, as like really high usage guys that have, all done a tremendous job of sacrificing and being willing to play alongside one another. There's only one ball, right? And so all those guys have done a great job playing off the ball, moving without the basketball, screening for one another. And they're all really good in isolation off the dribble. And when that happens, it kind of allows them to pick and choose their matchups, and they can do that on a nightly basis, right? Like every team's going to, provide you different matchups, and the Clippers do an excellent job of hunting the weakest link on your defense and really making it tough. Especially down the stretch of games, they're one of the best clutch time teams in the NBA this season. And how could they not be when they've got finishers like that? So, I think for the Clippers, they're the toughest. They're the toughest matchup for the Wolves, in my opinion, just because I think the way that they can spread the Wolves defense out and really make them work. That's obviously something the Wolves did really, really well tonight. But if you think about the proposition of having to do that potentially 7 times how much they make this defense work, if the Timberwolves offense, which more often than not struggles against switching and zone defenses, like the Clippers threw at them tonight, they did a good job tonight. But again, like I would feel comfortable if I were the Clippers betting that the Timberwolves wouldn't, continue that ball movement and cutting and spacing for a full series. And so if the Timberwolves defense kind of gets tired over that 7-game series and their offense isn't as disciplined as it was tonight, I think that would be, a series that the Wolves would really, struggle in. I certainly would pick the Clippers in that series. But, I think, hey, that could be a second round thing or a Western Conference Finals thing when the end of the day. I think these two teams are going to be 1 and 2 in the standings at the end of the season in whichever order you like them. Just because I think they're the 2 toughest teams for a team to play on any given night, just with the way the Timberwolves are able to clamp you down and make it really difficult offensively. And then for the Clippers, they put a bind on your defense and really provide a unique challenge to a defense to have to stay disciplined and rotate that much and be in a stance and be able to guard in space for 48 minutes the way that they are. So be really interesting, I think, to be able to see that in a second round series, or if they are 1 and 2, and let's say they both win their first 2 playoff series, and we get a Western Conference Finals with the Clippers and the Wolves. I think that would be, you think about how the Wolves and Celtics 2 games have been.
Yeah.
Like the Clippers play very similarly stylistically to the Celtics. And you see how these 3 games have gone between those 3 teams. And I certainly think that it would just be an incredible series for the average fan that wants to tune in. But the Clippers are, outside of the Timberwolves, are probably my favorite team in the league to watch. And certainly a team that I think Wolves fans should try to watch whenever they're on national TV, just as a little postseason scouting, because they are a really formidable team out west.
Would love to see the Vegas line or spread on a Wolves Clippers playoff matchup, man. Because you're right. I mean, you're splitting hairs. That would have to be very close and very dramatic as well. All right, I got 2 quickies to close before we wrap up. But first, a quick word from FanDuel. Quick reminder, tonight's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more with America's #1 sportsbook and official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Right now, new customers are getting $150 in bonus bets when you place just any $5 wager. That's $150 in bonus bets when you throw down just $5 on any bet. You don't even have to win. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, no better time to get in on all the action. The app, so easy to use. And they got everything you need. Money lines, parlays, prop bets, over-unders, you name it, they got it. FanDuel's got everything you need to bet on the entire NBA season, and it's by far the easiest and simplest betting app to use. Go check it out for yourself. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon today. America's #1 sportsbook. FanDuel, official partner of the NBA. Okay, schedule coming up next week. Now, Pistons, Grizzlies, who are really banged up now. OKC, which that should be a great one again. Hornets, Wizards, and the Nets. When you hear that run, knowing what you know, is it realistic for us to sit here and think this team can or should go something like 4-2? Like, is that even the floor? Like, would you be bummed if they didn't go 4-2 or better? Or what's your thoughts on the next 6 games?
Yeah, I think the next 6 games, I think it would be a bummer if they lost more than once.
Okay, yeah.
Like the Pistons, the Grizzlies, it was actually just announced while we were recording tonight that Desmond Bane has a grade 3 ankle sprain and is going to miss at least 6 weeks.
Wow.
So he will not play on Thursday.
Break, man. They're just fighting for that top 5 pick now, right? At this point.
Yeah.
Which is kind of scary when you think about next year. Ja Morant comes back, everybody comes back healthy, and you add a possible top 3, top 5 pick. Woo.
Yep, and they've got all their picks, so they can certainly go out and try to add another piece if they want to. But sticking with these next 6, Detroit obviously has been terrible. Memphis has been terrible. Oklahoma City, they blew the Wolves out, but the Wolves, played really, really well in that game at Target Center. That's going to be a Saturday night game. There's no reason in my mind why that shouldn't be a banger of a basketball game. I would give the Wolves the edge there because they're playing at home. Charlotte has been terrible. They got LaMelo Ball back finally, but Washington has been terrible, and Brooklyn has also been awful. Really the last 2, 3, 4 weeks here. So. And then you have San Antonio again. So I think in the next 7 games, anything worse than 6-1, I think you'd probably be wishing that things had gone differently. But again, the fact that we're even able to sit here and say like 6-1 would be good and 5-2 would be disappointing over any 7-game stretch at all during the season. I think just kind of speaks to how fortunate we are to watch this team every night. Kind of prognosticating the schedule here, but yeah, I mean, this is what they kind of grinded through that 16-game stretch for, was to get to this stretch of games here. And, and the great thing about it is it kind of matches up perfectly with the dog days of the NBA season, in which guys are really, really tired. They're just kind of looking ahead to the end of the light, kind of the light at the end of the tunnel, if you will, with the All-Star break coming. And so once the Wolves get past this stretch of games, it's, they've got a 3-game homestand. Then they've got a brutal road stand, and then it's the All-Star weekend, and they've got like 7 games at home outside of the break. So I think
7 straight games at home out of the break. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, so I think if they can get through these next 7 games at 5-2, 6-1, that they would definitely keep them atop the Western Conference and put them in a great position to have a more mediocre road stand, if you will, and kind of limp into the All-Star break before really, having a lot of energy with all those 7 home games. So they could all but lock up the #1 seed, potentially by like the 2nd week of March, if they just really take care of business here, I think, and kind of build a little bit of a lead, if you will, from Oklahoma City and Denver. So we'll see, but it should be fun, hopefully, for fans looking for more wins on the schedule here.
Absolutely. All right, 30 seconds I'm putting on the clock, then we got to get out of here. What's Leonard Miller's comp? Like, who's his style remind you of if he were to hit his ceiling? Because of all the young guys right now, he's by far the one guy most fans, I think, are hyped about as far as the developmental guys. And I think it's really been that way from the first night they picked him at the top of round 2.
Yeah, it's kind of tough to just be put on the spot and think of somebody. I think defensively, honestly, you think about what Jaden McDaniels can do off the ball. I think that's kind of who I think
that's
of.
enticing alone right there. That's enticing.
Off the ball. Yeah. He's got the instincts that you need. He just has to stay locked in on the defensive end of the floor and offensively, man, it's hard. I don't even know if I could give you a good offensive comp off the top of my head. I'm so bad at things off the top of my head. When you're talking about comps,
but as far as like a 1 to 10, I mean, as far as prospects goes, I know he wasn't a lottery pick. So to get a guy in the NBA draft, top of round 2, that this many fans are excited about, he's obviously shown some serious flashes here or there. And again, I know things are very early, but is that accurate?
Yeah, it certainly is. I mean, he's been benched in the G League a couple of times for just some poor defensive effort and lack of focus on that end of the floor. But his that's obviously one that's going to come with a lefty being 6'10", can handle the ball. Isn't the greatest shooter. Lamar Odom is definitely up there. But yeah, I think he's just got to be more efficient offensively, I think. And once he can kind of learn. Where he likes to get to on the floor and refining his handle. His offensive problems are kind of similar to Jaden's in that, his handle just gets a little sloppy sometimes on the drive and just has to get – obviously has touch around the rim, but just kind of how you get from where you catch the ball to where you can finish it is still a little bit questionable at this point. So it's a good thing that they've been able to get him in the G League and he's played a ton. So that's been great. And
hey, I'll take a Lamar Odom light even.
And he'll play next year.
Guy.
Slow-mo won't be back next year, most likely. So with his contract situation, which is just a bummer because of how awesome he's been these last handful of weeks in last season as well. But But yeah, he'll play next year. So Wolves fans should certainly be excited about that.
Well done tonight. As always, Wolves move to 28-11 on the year. Back on the road this Wednesday versus those lowly Pistons for hopefully a nice little tune-up game there. Tip-off 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. As always, huge shout-out to everyone that joined us in the postcast. Always love everyone's feedback and comments throughout every postcast. And rest assured, we'll be back each and every game, same time, same place, right here to break it all down. You got to go check out all of Jack's work on Twitter at JRBorman13 and check out Jack on the Minnesota basketball party with our guys Sam Ekstrom, Gophers legend Ron Johnson, Carol Evans, Reggie Wilson, each and every Wednesday afternoon as well. And if you haven't already, Ben Beacon, spitting fire over the Locked On Wolves podcast each and every day. That'll do it for us tonight. He's Jack Borman. I'm Luke Inman on Twitter at Luke_Spinman. Until next time, signing out.